not a manager, but I had a teacher who was fired due to a spectacular display of poor judgment. I was in grade 5, so now knew 10-year-olds. The teacher decided to reward some good behavior with a movie in class. We were given a choice between a movie about a family in the mountains and a movie about a ghost. We picked the family because we thought the ghost movie might be scary. It was The Shining. We watched it, unedited, in class. Some kids hid their faces through most of it. Most of us went home with terrible nightmares, and the teacher was forcibly removed from class and fired the following morning. And there was Thedrigan. I worked at a computer repair shop. This dude showed up to his first day of work, absolutely high as a kite, and wearing no shirt. He had no explanation for why he didn't have a shirt. I told him to go home and not to come back. I wasn't even technically a manager, I was just the only one working that day besides him. So technically I didn't have the authority to fire him, but damned if I didn't do it anyway. My theory is he thought his shirt smelled like weed, so he threw it away on the way in. At FF3 Locas. Our fiancé worked at a shady car dealership for a short time. He came home and told me this one car technician had borrowed a high-end sports car from the lot to take for a joyride. He then proceeded to flip the car, totaling it, and fled the scene, leaving his 3 Monster Energy drinks behind in the mangled car. Turns out, he violated his probation by driving the vehicle and had to go back to jail. At Earthworm Calypso. My dad's got a good story about getting fired. When he was in college he worked at a Sears, and was the guy who called over the POS system to let the customers know when the store was closing. So he decided he'd finally had enough of working at Sears, and on what he decided his last day was, he called through, "The store will be closing in 5 minutes, vacate the premises or we will release the hounds." At Bourbon Buckra. Toll I-01010. At a retail job, we had a kid come in and punch in for the day then go home. Would come back at quitting time and punch out. MT 1017. Not my personal experience, but one fellow contractor had a safety guy for 6 months. One weekend he took a trip out of town for non-work related reasons, but used the company truck and charged it all on the company credit card. On his way up there he ran a random person off the road, who just so happened to be one of the owners of another contractor who works closely with the one who employed this guy. Shortly after he was fired, and I'm sure criminal charges were being brought against him. A couple weeks later his wife calls his former employer saying he had called her randomly and killed himself in his truck on the side of the highway. Me and another colleague went searching for records of this guy, couldn't find anything, no claims of a suicide in the local paper where he supposedly killed himself at. Thought it was weird, but whatever. It turns out this guy falsified all his qualifications and job experience. Fast forward a month later, and I heard through the grapevine that the original contractor who had employed this guy received a call from some contractor across country because he applied for work there and put them down as his previous employer. He faked his own death to get out of trouble with the company, then proceeded to put them down on his resume, not expecting anyone to check his references. Lol. From a sleepam. I worked retail, and we had an employee that would hide and take naps inside racks of clothes. Somehow that wasn't the reason we fired her. We fired her for stealing clothes and then wearing them to work. From Jupreki Bro. When I worked in hotels, I was promoted to front desk manager. My first task was to hire someone. I ended up getting this very charismatic guy that was a little over the top, but overall seemed like a solid employee. After I end up hiring him, and on his first day he asked me if it's okay if he carries his gun on him, and I think that's strange, but it is his right, and the owners honestly didn't care so long as he had his license. He was never able to produce a license, so he was never able to bring this handgun on the property. About a week into his employment we find out that he's been calling guests, specifically the really attractive females, and asking them if they need any overnight service. We were very understaffed, and my boss decided that instead of firing him we were going to take him off the desk and put him on basic groundsman duties. Part of these duties included driving the shuttle to the airport and back, and also filling up the shuttle when it got low on fuel, which means that he had access to the gas card. Our accountant confronts me one day about some very strange charges to the gas card. Apparently we had been filling up the shuttle near daily at anywhere between $20 to $45. We looked into it and got the surveillance footage from the gas station, and it turns out was this kid filling up his friends' cars and even his own car. When confronted he tells my boss that I said it was okay. Obviously that wasn't true and they didn't believe him. He ended up also being my first termination. One of the other employees Googled his name and found out he was a child predator. He was in a sexual relationship with a 12-year-old girl when he was 26. I also found out that day that we did not actually do background checks, we just said we did and assumed anyone with a history wouldn't bother applying. Ill. I work at an art studio where we teach classes and sell pottery that our artists make for others to paint. I'm one of the artists and the manager. I started getting a funny feeling about one of my employees. She wasn't doing anything blatantly wrong, just seemed to work really slowly sometimes, request insignificant but kinda odd schedule changes, and have different break habits from the other staff. I started feeling like she was stealing, but this is a really small business, so I didn't have her on camera or any way to really prove it, until she accidentally sent me a video of herself painting pieces that I made from her home. From Convertible Brit 1. I am a chef at an upscale restaurant. The sauté cook has a lobster dish on his station that involves a technique called deglazing that involves alcohol, so in turn the pan catches on fire briefly and flames up. When you do it correctly, hard to do it incorrect, the alcohol is cooked off and the flame goes out. Every time he made this dish he would deglaze the pan, catch it on fire and then blow it out, blowing his own germs and nastiness all over someone's food and everything in the blast radius. That was a week ago. Fired him after he did it multiple times after being asked not to. Maybe it's because of the current state of affairs, but I couldn't believe a trained cook would do that. Mohimensh. He said, my ex-wife died and there's no one to take care of our kids. Needed a week off to sort everything out. Ex called to talk to him. Boom. One of the guys went to lunch with short hair and came back with a ponytail down to his ass. Identical twins that were sharing the job. All the guys knew and thought it was funny. Yikes. Was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I asked a famous actor for an autograph whilst they were eating at the restaurant I worked in. They should have just stood their ground. I was a security guard and got fired for yawning because I was supposed to just stand there. But all publicity is good publicity. I stopped a card being robbed whilst on shift. I got fired for bringing too much publicity to my workplace. My husband is a manager and his employee somehow had another employee's ID and then stole that person's check and cashed it. Caught it all on camera. She still denied it. Quotation mark at Darksbooks. Working at Pizza Hut, I had a new delivery driver out on a snowy day. Seemed to be doing fine. Then I get a call from one of his deliveries where he was supposed to deliver to the community center desk. What he did was call them from his car and tell them to come get their pizza. He didn't even get out of his car to hand it to them. Quotation mark at sweatpants. It's safe to say he didn't get any tips that day. I gave my secretary a document that I wanted incorporated into a letter I had written, and she hucked the document like a frisbee into her trashin. It was literally my only copy, so I had to walk over and fish it out. That was our last day. Quotation mark at Sandman 2. Monkey Mix. I was a bartender / bar manager. This guy came in one night and said he was an aspiring DJ and asked if we would consider hiring him to come in just on Sunday nights to DJ for us. He said we wouldn't have to pay him at first, he would just take tips and we could renegotiate after he helped to build up our Sunday night crowd. He lasted less than 3 months. He drove away so much business and I got so many complaints. He played the same songs every week, and when people made requests for commonly known songs, he had no idea who the musicians, were. I had to fire someone who was working for free. He was a nice guy, which is the only reason he lasted as long as he did. From Business Lady 234, my coworker at a coffee shop told a customer she didn't feel like making X drink and she should go elsewhere. Wore Cookie Monster PJ pants while we had a very strict black or khaki pants, no jeans, no leggings policy at the time. Couldn't figure out the concept of milk. This still baffles me to this day. Like I was trying to show her how to steam milk properly, she was off in La La Land, and when she snapped back into the conversation asking, "What are we doing again?" followed by me reminding her, and she quite literally asked what was in the gallon jug that I poured into the metal pitcher. I told her it was milk and she just looked at me, her eyes saying. She was there for 2 days. Mummer Speechy. Fired a high schooler because his girlfriend kept showing up and they would disappear behind the racks. I told him his girlfriend was banned, trying to not fire him, and she kept sneaking back. Work in an office and they hired a girl from a temp agency to help me. She wouldn't do anything unless I walked her through each step after telling her she had to do it. Hey, an estimate just arrived on the fax right next to you. Complete the quote and send it back. Come to find out, she was playing Spider and Solitaire on her computer. She was also sneaking out back in the warehouse. Guys thought she was doing drugs. I told my boss get rid of her. I would rather work alone than babysit her, so he called the temp agency and told them to stop sending her. She showed up the next day, so boss sent her home and called the agency saying hey, she's used this, stop sending her. She showed up again the next day. This went on for over a week. The people at the temp agency said they told her to stop showing, but she kept coming in every morning, mind usually 10 to 20 minutes late. My boss wouldn't say anything to her face, so finally I said hey, we can't afford to pay you, so we had to let you go through the temp agency. They should have told you. She was all, oh, I thought they were joking. I was so glad she was gone. Hope you liked this video. I'll be making more like this. If you have any ideas or tips, then please let me know in the comments. I am new to this and also extremely shy, lol, plus I only have a phone to make videos on, so they're not the best, yet I'm sure as time goes by, I'll be able to make them a lot better. So if you like this video, even the slightest, then please share, like, comment and subscribe. It would help me a lot. Thank you. See you in the next one.